here we go. So, Book of Yahusha 4 to 6. We're live right now. All right, so let's close out this extra window here so we don't have stuff playing in the background. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug as always, and we are live right now. So just want to say thank you for joining us today. Shabbat Shalom to all of our brothers and sisters, and we are going to be continuing our study on the Book of Yahusha, aka the Book of Joshua, chapter 4 to 6. So let me just see here. I think what I haven't done in a while is use this parallel Bible I have here, like KJV NLT. So what I'll do is I'll put the Septuagint on the shared screen here, and
We can't hear anything. Hey, bro, I don't know if you're talking at all, but I can't hear anything. Might just be that you're not talking. Can anyone else hear anything?
I can hear you. I don't hear anything else.
okay, my bad, guys. Somehow my microphone got muted out of nowhere. That's weird. Sorry about that. I don't know how that even happened. Okay.
A likely story.
Here. What's weird is it didn't happen until we got on the live. That was weird. So anyway, what I read before, just to reread, because since I was muted, when the people had completely passed over the Jordan, Yahuwah spoke to Yahusha, saying, take men from the people, one of each tribe, charge them, you shall take out of the midst of the Jordan 12-foot stones, having carried them across together with yourselves, place them in your camp, where you shall encamp for the night. And Yahusha, calling 12 men of distinction among the children of Yashrael, one of each tribe, said to them, advance before me in the presence of Yahuwah in the midst of the Jordan. And each, having taken up a stone from there, let him carry it on his shoulders according to the number of the tribes of Yashrael. Interesting. So they're carrying these stones on their
I think we read
shoulders.
this last week.
Oh, we did. We got to chapter 4 last week. Okay.
It does sound familiar.
All right. Then it's 5 to 7. Then I gotta change it. Then. All right.
Mhm.
So let me just fix my notes here. Then. Okay. So we're actually gonna be, my bad, audience. So it's gonna be chapters 5 to 7. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. And it came to pass, chapter 5, verse 1. And it came to pass when the kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan heard, and the kings of Phoenicia by the sea. By the way, it might not be Phoenicia in your translations, it might be something else. That Yahuwah Elua, an important verse there, had cried up dried up the river from the Jordan from before the children of Yashrael when they passed over, that their hearts failed and they were terror stricken. Says in the Greek, it would reference that their hearts melted. So I'm going to put a little note about that. Hearts melted. So their thoughts or minds melted. Also in verse 1 here, we have the compound name of Yahuwah Elua there. Okay. Had dried up the river Jordan from before the children of Yashrael when they passed over, that their hearts failed and they were terror stricken. There was no sense in them because of the children of Yashrael. And about this time, Yahuwah said to Moshe, make you stone knives of sharp stone and sit down and circumcise the children of Yashrael the second time. And Yahusha made sharp knives of stone and circumcised the children of Yashrael in at the place called the Hill of Foreskins. And the way in which Yahusha purified the children of Yashrael, as many as were born in the way, and as many as were uncircumcised of them that came out of Egypt. All these Yahusha circumcised for 42 years. Yashrael wandered in the wilderness of Mabdaris. Therefore, most of the fighting men that came out of the land were uncircumcised, that came out of the land of Egypt, who disobeyed the commands of Elua, concerning whom also he determined that they should not see the land, which Yahuwah swore to give their fathers, a land flowing with milk and honey. So what's interesting here is that it seems like them not being circumcised was because their hearts weren't circumcised first. So that's kind of interesting. I would definitely jot that verse down, verse 6. Hearts need to be circumcised first. Okay. In their place, he raised up their sons, whom Yahusha circumcised because they were uncircumcised, having been born by the way. Verse 8, when they had been circumcised, they rested, continuing there in the camp till they were healed. Interesting. Huh. Interesting. And Yahuwah said to Yahusha the son of Nun, on this day have I removed the reproach of Egypt from you. And he called the name of the place Galgala. And the children of Yashrael kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening, to the westward of Jericho, on the opposite of the Jordan in the plain, and they ate of the grain of the earth unleavened and new. Hence why when the Passover happens, I always point this to people that are of the opinion of the green ears opinion. If that's the case, this verse does not make sense. For you to eat grain cannot be at a beginning stage of growing. For you to eat grain, that it has to be harvestable. So meaning it has to be ripened. So what it's saying here in verse 11 in context would be that they ate grain of the earth unleavened and new. New would be ripened. It would be, ready at that Abib stage. So anyway. In this day the manna failed after they had eaten of the grain of the land. And the children of Yahusha no longer had manna, and they took the fruits of the land of the Phoenicians in that year. Interesting. And it came to pass when Yahusha was in Jericho. You okay, Mom?
Yeah, I just need a drink. So.
That he looked up with his eyes and saw a man standing before him, and there was a drawn sword. And Yahusha drew near and said to him, "Are you for us or on the side of our enemies?" And he said to him, "I am now come, the chief captain of the army of Yahuwah." Now, the Masoretic would probably, I'm assuming here, doesn't have the word chief. So there's probably a reason for that. Chief captain of the army of Yahuwah. This is why it's important to understand who Yahuwah of armies is. Right? He is the commander of the army of Yahuwah. Where else do we see that? Revelations 19, verse 13. And Yahusha fell on his face upon the earth and said to him, "Yahuwah, what command you your servant?" And fine, if you think it's supposed to be master, you can say master. I personally think it's Yahuwah there. I think Kurios is actually there. So he's actually calling him Yahuwah. And the captain of Yahuwah's army said to Yahusha, "Loose your shoe off of your feet, for the place where you now stand is set apart." Again, where else do we see that phrase? That phrase, I think, Mom, is only mentioned, twice in the whole Bible?
Yeah.
Okay, the only other time is Exodus 3, I think it's 3:2. My memory serves me correct. It's Exodus 3:2, where Yahusha, the Malach Yahuwah, Yahusha pre-incarnate, talks to Masha, tells Masha to take the sandal off his feet. Okay, so I think it's very clear who this commander is. I think it's very clear. So, by the way, this is why, just FYI, this is why some of these Jehovah Witnesses out there and Mormons, they get this confused and think that Yahusha is just a messenger. This is why, not understanding who the messenger of Yahuwah is, and understanding that through the scriptures, you'll see a oneness between Malach Yahuwah and Yahuwah himself, that they're the same person. So if you don't understand that, you could fall into the error of thinking Yahusha was just a regular messenger, if you catch my drift there. So anyway, but we know for a fact the commander of Yahuwah's army is Yahusha, like I said. Revelations 19, verse 13 gives us a clue here as well. And this is why I believe that when you see Yahuwah of armies or Yahuwah Sabaoth in scripture, it's actually talking about Yahusha. Revelations 19, 13 to 14. He is clothed in a garment dipped in blood, Isaiah 63. Okay. His name is called the Word of Yahuwah. By the way, if you go to Genesis 49:11, it talks about his garment being dipped in blood as well, just FYI. His name is called Dabar Yahuwah. The armies which are in heaven followed him on white horses, clothed in white, pure, fine linen. So verse 14 is actually the verse I was referring to, where this seems to indicate that every time you saw, like in your modern Bibles, like Yahuwah of hosts, Yahuwah of armies, Yahuwah Sabayot, that's Yahusha pre-incarnate. So anyway, I just wanted to show that. And let me just go back here to the Zoom app just in case anyone has any comments or questions or what have it. Okay, just wanted to double check. So that's pretty much so. Oh, go ahead, brother. Go
I
ahead.
guess it deleted my comment, but I was gonna say I didn't know we were only doing 3 chapters because I thought we were still doing 4 because I know we did 1 to 4 the last week.
Oh, okay.
The
Yeah,
picture, the thumbnail, I did it 5 to 8. I could redo it though if you want me to redo it.
No. We can do 5 to 8. Not a big deal. That's not a big deal. Yeah.
But if you want to do like moving forward, if we're gonna do 3, I could start just doing it like 3 chapters.
Yeah. I'll remind you that we want to just only do 3 a week, only because it is a very short book. And we'll probably be done anyway. Even if we do 3 a week, it will be pretty quick. I think there's only like 24 chapters in this book, so yeah. But four is not that big of a deal.
No.
But yeah. So let me see here. So I'm just trying to see if anything else was in chapter 5 of note. Obviously, the circumcision, the fact that Yahuwah did not have this generation circumcised. It seems because of the circumcision of their hearts. And then obviously they kept the Passover, the grain had to be ripened. So verse 11 was a pretty big, important verse for me, for those trying to figure out when exactly the Passover would have to happen. Definitely seems like to me you can't have a Passover in winter if you're having new grain you're able to eat. So anyway, I think that's about it. We also see that the inhabitants of Jericho, Yahuwah kind of mentions in chapter 5 that they had fear of Yashrael because of what Yahuwah did to the Egyptians and all that. I think that's about it. Unless anyone else wants to mention anything, I think we could jump to chapter 6. Mom, do you have anything?
No, I don't have anything.
All right. I'm trying to find a clear page here. Write down some stuff. Okay. All right.
What verse was the circumcision of the heart? Let me see.
Let me see here. I think it's early in the chapter. Let me see here. I think it might be 6 or 5. Here we go. For all the people who came out. Oh, that's interesting. It's worded a little bit different. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit more specific in the Septuagint. It says, all these Yahusha circumcised. For 42 years, Yashrael wandered in the wilderness of Mabdaris. So it seems to sound like these men were not circumcised for the time they were in Egypt, and Yahusha had to circumcise all of them. Verse 4, I think, is where I got the idea that the heart was the problem, why they weren't circumcised beforehand. This is the way in which Yahusha purified the children of Yashrael, as many as were born in the way, and as many as were uncircumcised of them that came out of Egypt. I just want to see if the Masoretic.
Well, this has always left me confused because they were in the wilderness, and Yahuwah was teaching them the commands, and circumcision was a big part of that. And yet all of these, in order for them to have come out of Egypt And in order for them to
Mhm.
to be the ones going into the promised land, they would have had to have been like little kids coming out of Egypt, like
Yeah.
40 years later, but they were never circumcised. Like, I don't understand that. Why weren't they circumcised?
The only thing I can think of is that because of the rebellion of their fathers in of that previous generation, Yahuwah held off, kind of similar to how Yahuwah didn't have Abraham get circumcised until he was like almost 100 years old, I think it was. Uh, I think for in Yahuwah's mind, in his will, the command of circumcision is not high on the list. It's like one of the lesser commands, and Yahuwah wants to see your heart is in it first before you getting physically circumcised. Just like how Paul talks about how the circumcision party would add it as a prerequisite to be grafted into. You need to be circumcised right away, when Yahuwah's will is a lot different than the way the circumcision party thought, where Yahuwah wants you to be actually grafted in beforehand, before being circumcised, and that being circumcised of itself does not profit you if you're not really fully grafted in and circumcised in the heart first to actually want to keep his ways. So, like, for example, like, these men who were just being circumcised then, when they were growing up, they possibly had parents who were not teaching them the right thing, parents that were constantly being rebellious to Yahuwah, and Yahuwah wanted to make sure these men that are growing up, that they would be, fully circumcised, in the heart beforehand. Now, that's the only thing I can think of, is
Yeah, that
that there
makes
was
sense.
that I think there was mainly a specific issue with their parents, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, their parents would have been the ones that would have died 40 years in the wilderness, and during the 40 years in the wilderness and all that. So yeah, I don't think, obviously we see later on Yahuwah kind of enforces this commandment of, you got to, as soon as the baby's 8 days old, to circumcise it. But I think there was a special occasion with this generation where there was an issue with their parents not raising them the right way. And like, for example, like, Yahuwah shows us mercy. Those of us that get grafted in, none of us are really circumcised on the 8th day. It's either one way or the other. Either we're circumcised before the 8 days, or we're not circumcised at all nowadays. So, I believe Yahuwah shows mercy, and shows, mercy to those being grafted in, and even a little bit of mercy to those that are, even born into the Hebrew walk, that kind of, you know, I think to Yahuwah, definitely spiritual circumcision, physical circumcision, most of the time. Um, you know, that's the best way I could describe it. But I noticed what is interesting, though, is verse 5 seems to leave out. I never noticed this before. It leaves out Yahusha's name here. Um, or maybe that's just a translation issue, but I noticed that in the Septuagint it says all these Yahusha circumcised. So some people would, think that it's almost like confusing in the Masoretic, because it just says, for all the people who came out were circumcised. So people would believe that they're they're circumcised already. So I don't know, the way verse 5 in the Masoretic reads, it's a little too generalized, in my opinion. It's a little too generalized. So, because Yahusha's name there in verse 5 is completely omitted. Um, so to me, that's a little weird there. Yeah, and then verse 6 talks about, because they did not listen to the voice of Yahuwah, those whom Yahuwah swore that they would not see the land. It was interesting. Anyway, all right. Mom, would you like to read chapter 6?
Now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the children of Israel. No one went out and no one came in. Then Yahuwah said to Yahusha, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests, blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse, and the people will go up, every man straight in. So Yahusha, son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah, and have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it. And he ordered the people, advance, march around the city with the armed guard going ahead of the ark of Yahuwah. When Yahusha had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before Yahuwah went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of Yahuwah's covenant followed them. The armed guard marched ahead of the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard followed the ark. All this time the trumpets were sounding, but Yahusha had commanded the people, do not give a war cry, do not raise your voices, do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout, then shout. So he had the ark of Yahuwah carried around the city, circling it once. Then the people returned to camp and spent the night there. Yahusha got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of Yahuwah. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the ark of Yahuwah and blowing the trumpets. The armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of Yahuwah, while the trumpets kept sounding. So on the 2nd day, they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. On the 7th day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except that on that day, they circled the city 7 times. The 7th time around, when the priests sounded the trumpet blast, Yahusha commanded the people, shout, for Yahuwah has given you the city. The city and all that is in it are to be devoted to Yahuwah. Only Rahab, the prostitute, and all who are with her in her house shall be spared, because she had despised descent. But keep away from the devoted things, so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise, you will make the camp of Yashrael liable to destruction and bring disaster on it. All the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to Yahuwah and must go into his treasury. When the trumpet sounded, the people shouted, and at the sound of the trumpet, when the people gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. So every man charged straight in, and they took the city. They devoted the city to Yahuwah and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. Yahusha said to the 2 men who had spied out the land, go into the prostitute's house and bring her out, and all who belong to her, in accordance with your oath to her. So the young men who had done the spying went in and brought out Rahab, her father and mother and brothers, and all who belonged to her. They brought out her entire family and put them in a place outside the camp of Yasharel. Then they burned the whole city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron into the treasury of Yahuwah's house. But Yahusha spared Rahab the prostitute with her family and all who belonged to her, because she hid the men Yahusha had sent as spies to Jericho, and she lives among the children of Israel to this day. At that time, Yahusha pronounced this solemn oath: Cursed before Yahuwah is the man who undertakes to rebuild this city, Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn son will he lay its foundation. At the cost of his youngest will he set up its gates. So Yahuwah was with Yahusha, and his fame spread throughout the land.
So now was this the chapter we didn't get to read about the pulling of the wall of Jericho, right?
That's what I just read.
This is right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
That word for the word for accursed thing is they translate it like that in the Masoretic and in the Septuagint, but I don't think that that's completely accurate, especially like when you look at what those things consisted of within, because they definitely weren't things that were accursed. They were things that were offered up to Yahuwah, which the word is anathema. It can mean cut off, so it can point to a curse and cut off. However, I think that other definition that theirs gives is more accurate. Thing set up or laid by in order to be kept, specifically an offering resulting from a vow.
dedicated.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Yeah, that's how I would agree. That's how it should have been translated. Like it should say a thing dedicated to Yahuwah. Yeah, sometimes the plunder or what's under the ban would be dedicated to Yahuwah. Like there would be, depending on the situation, what Yahuwah commanded, to Brother Yahusha's point, not always would Yahuwah put these nations' possessions under the ban. Sometimes Yahuwah would have them offer it to him as an offering. So yeah, it's not a good idea to have it always translated as that accursed thing or what have it. Yeah. Trying to see here. So, let's see how. Yeah. So the Masoretic, of course, they start doing this whole Adonai thing. I was kind of wondering when they were going to start pulling this Adonai garbage. They did it in verse 7 here. I'm just looking at. So as you can see here in the Greek, well, the ABP puts another LORD there, but I don't think that's supposed to be there. Interesting. Okay. I guess you could have it as Master Yahuwah. I have no problem with that. With two kurioses together like that, I have no problem with that. But when you look at the Hebrew here, seems like they're adding to the scriptures here. They're putting H136 in front of Yahuwah here. So they would have it read as Adonai Yahuwah, which you'll see a lot. You're going to see that a lot. The H136, you'll see that added to the text by the Masoretes a lot. Even in verse 8 here, they substitute Yahuwah's name here with Adonai. See, they even tell you this in the Strongs, guys. Hopefully you guys can see that on the shared screen. BDB definition, Brown's Driver Briggs Dictionary. Number 2 definition, lowercase Lord. Title spoken in place of Yahuwah in Judean display of reverence. I would say rabbinical tradition. Okay. It doesn't have anything to do with reverence. What they're talking about reverence is in the Talmud. It's spoken that Yahuwah's name was too sacred to utter.
Mhm.
Which I'm sorry, that's not reverence. You're not reverencing him by doing that. You're bringing his name to nothing. So it's actually the opposite of reverence. So according to scripture. Okay. So let me just see here. What shall I say? What's interesting in verse 8 in the LXX, it doesn't even mention Yahuwah at all. It just says, what shall I say since Yahshua has turned his back from before his enemies? So that's interesting. Huh. Very different there. And Yahuwah said to Yahusha, rise up. Why have you fallen upon your face? Okay, good. They actually have Yahuwah there. Good. All right. So. Okay. And verse 12 is what Brother Yahusha was talking about. Cursed thing does not make sense in that context. Especially if it's being dedicated. I would have to look at the full context of the chapter, but if something's being dedicated, it can't be a cursed thing. What you would give a cursed thing to Yahuwah? That doesn't make sense. So this is the problem with translators. They take in the Greek and in the Hebrew, one word can have multiple meanings, especially in Hebrew. So yeah, not a fan of automatically always translating it as a cursed thing. Okay. Maybe it should be cursed thing here because it's actually talking about removing something from among them. Okay. I guess in this context, it would make sense for it to be that. Okay. Fire. Oh yeah, that's right. This is the guy that gets killed because he brought a cursed thing among Yashrael. I remember this. Okay. Okay. Now, Mom, that was chapter 6, right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. Let's see. We'll get someone else. My bad. I was kind of skimming through. I thought I was skimming through chapter 6, but I was skimming through 7 there. It's my bad about that. So, all right, Brother Dennis, would you like to read chapter 7? If you're unmuted.
Yeah, I had to unmute myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're fixing to get a storm here. It's thundering outside.
Oh boy.
And it's real dark.
Huh.
Okay, chapter 7? Yeah,
Yep.
Okay. But the children of Yisrael committed a trespass regarding that which is under the ban. For Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zebdi, son of Zerah, of the tribe of Yehuda, took of that which is under the ban, and the displeasure of Yahuwah burned against the children of Yisrael. Now Yahusha sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is beside Beth Awan, on the east side of Beth El, and spoke to them, saying, Go up and spy out the land. And the men went up and spied out Ai. And they returned to Yahusha and said to him, Let not all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up and smite Ai. Do not make all the people toil up there, for the people of Ai are few. And about 3,000 men went up there from the people, but they fled before the men of Ai. And the men of Ai smote about 36 men, but they pursued them from before the gate as far as Shepharim, and smote them on the descent, for the hearts of the people melted and became like water. And Yahusha tore his garments and fell to the earth on his face before the ark of Yahuwah until evening, both he and the elders of Yisrael, and they put dust on their heads. And Yahusha said, O Master Yahuwah, why have you brought this people over the Jordan at all to give us into the land of the Amorites to destroy us? If only we had been content to stay beyond the Jordan. O Yahuwah, what do I say when Yisrael turns its back before its enemies? And the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land here, and shall surround us and cut off our name from the earth. What then do you do for your great name? And Yahuwah said to Yahusha, Rise up. Why are you lying on your face? Yisrael has sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant, which I commanded them. And they have even taken some of that which is under the ban, and have both stolen and deceived, and also put it among their own goods. And the sons of Yisrael shall not be able to stand before their enemies. They are going to turn their backs before their enemies, for they have become accursed. I am not with you any more, unless you destroy that which is under the ban from your midst. Rise up, set the people apart, and you shall say, Set yourselves apart for tomorrow, because thus says Yahweh Elohim of Yisrael, that which is man is in your midst, O Yisrael. You are not able to stand before your enemies until you put away that which is under the ban out of your midst. And you shall be brought near in the morning, according to your tribes. And it shall be, the tribe which Yahuwah takes comes according to clans, and the clan which Yahuwah takes comes by households, and the household which Yahuwah takes comes by men. And it shall be that he who is taken with that which is under the ban is burned with fire, he and all that he has, because he has transgressed the covenant of Yahuwah, and because he has committed wickedness in Yisrael. So Yahusha arose early in the morning and brought Yisrael by their tribes, and the tribe of Yehudah was taken. And he brought the clan of Yehudah, and he took the clan of the Zerites, and he brought the clan of the Zerites by men, and Zebdi was taken. He brought his household by men, and Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zebdi, son of Zerah, of the tribe of Yehudah, was taken. Then Yahusha said to Achan, My son, now give esteem to Yahuwah Elohim of Yisrael, and make confession to him, and please declare to me what you have done. Do not hide it from me. So Achan answered Yahusha and said, Truly I have sinned against Yahuwah Elohim of Yisrael, and this is what I did. When I saw among the spoil a lovely garment from Shinar, and 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and took them. And see, they are hidden in the ground in the midst of my tent, with the silver under it. Yahusha sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and see, it was hidden in his tent, and the silver under it. And they took them from the midst of the tent, brought them to Yahusha and to all the people of Yisrael, and laid them out before Yahuwah. Then Yahusha and all Yisrael with him took Achan, son of Zerah, and the silver, and the garment, and the wedge of gold, and his sons, and his daughters, and his oxen, and his donkeys, and his sheep, and his tent, and all that he had, and they brought them to the valley of Achor. And Yahusha said, Why have you troubled us? Yahuwah does trouble you today. Then all Yisrael stoned him with stones, and they burned them with fire after they had stoned them with stones. And they raised over him a great heap of stones, which remains to this day. Then Yahuwah turned from the fierceness of his displeasure. Therefore, the name of that place has been called the Valley of Achor to this day. Oh, boy.
Yeah, what's interesting is we see this happening with King Saul, right? And King Shaul really should have been treated the same way. He took something that was under the band, saved it, and then tried to offer it to Yahuwah. If someone like this guy was just hiding it, desiring to take it for himself, it's not really much different of a sin. I think Yahuwah probably gave King Shaul a little bit of mercy when that happened, because really, if this guy's being stoned, technically you can make the argument Shaul should have been stoned for doing the same thing. You know, so pretty interesting.
I'm not exactly sure here, but I definitely think it's something to meditate on, and because I definitely think they're here. I'm just not seeing it. But you have Achan. Achan is the son of Zerah, which is the son of Yehuda. Zerah was the son that stuck his hand out, either his hand or his leg, I'm not sure, but he stuck his hand out, or one of his members out first, and you have the nurse wrapping the scarlet cord around him, but then he pulls it back in, and Perez comes out instead, and you have Yahusha being from Perez rather than Zerah, even though Zerah was the one that had the scarlet thread around him. And so you have this son, Achan, the son of Zerah, doing this, and Zerah being the one with the scarlet thread around him, like literally the chapter after you have Rahab being saved with the scarlet thread. I mean, maybe there's coincidence, but this is just it's really strange. I don't know. Something.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like how you had Yaqub and Esau when they were in their mother's womb, kind of, battling one another. So there could be some contention from Zerah towards what's the other one, Perez. There could be something about that. There could be a spiritual battle there at the minimum. Yeah, I never put that together before. I never noticed this before either. Verse 21 says that this person was eyeing a garment from Shinar. 200 shekels of silver, a bar of gold. So with the gold and the silver, he also was coveting a garment from Babylon, supposedly.
What translation is that? Oh, okay, I
New
see.
Hard English Bible, YHWH version. So I wonder if there's like a Hebrew word there for shine on. Let me see here. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's in the Masoretic. I think the Greek might not have Babylon there.
It says this one's interesting. The Septuagint's interesting though, because it says, I beheld in the spoils 1, 2, but the word is various colors or many colored. I beheld a many colored robe. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think this is the same word used for Yusuf's garments, if I'm not mistaken. This would be the same Greek word. Variegated. Yeah, I think I've seen that for the chapter with Yusuf and his many-colored robe. It's very possible that Babylon kind of just copied, they would have just copied whatever Yusuf would have had. I could see their style being copied from the Shemites. I could see that.
I could see the fact that you have Babylon as a nation that brought the nations together. I could see the many colored robe coming from them, at least being pointing towards that. The many different nations, United Nations.
Yeah, they're a melting pot, definitely. I think Babel also means confusion and mixing. The word Babel. So yeah. With Yusuf, I think there was a different context to why he had a many-colored robe. I think it had more to do with prophecy and the fact that Ephraim is also known as the tribe of Yusuf, and Ephraim is supposed to be the fullness of all the nations, the Gentiles. So it's kind of like a parallel. It's kind of like one is it's like two different paradigms. You have one that's mixing, the other that is, basically the fullness of the Gentiles versus mixing cultures together and mixing them together into a melting pot. Yeah.
Yeah, it is the
pretty
same word.
interesting.
It is the same word used in Genesis in 37:3.
Yeah, I had a feeling because I saw the word variegated being used in certain translations, so I had a feeling. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. So this guy, this ACAB guy, or Akar, I guess it's pronounced as in the Greek, he he now Mom, Yahuwah commanded them not to take this stuff, right?
Yeah.
They had a warning ahead of time.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Now, I wonder why they're being put under the ban. I wonder if the reason these things are being put under the ban is probably because the Jerichoites were pagans, probably. I notice a lot when he has them take over these heathen nations, if they belong to like idol worshippers, Yahuwah doesn't want them desiring the gold, the silver, and all that, like, because it will cause them to commit idolatry. So I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Do you think it's possible that it could just be that they, because that I could see that too, but I also wonder if maybe with it being the very first city that they conquer, that he gets the first of it goes to Yahuwah.
Yeah. Was this dedicated to Yahuwah? Because if it's put under a ban, it would be utterly.
That's what I thought ban means, at least from what the Strong says.
Yeah. Because usually when something's put under a ban, it's like different. Like there's like dedicated means like you're supposed to save it and give it to Yahuwah. Ban would be you're supposed
Dedicated.
to utterly burn it. Like he would command them with certain, like especially the giant tribes, he would tell them, burn their stuff, burn the cattle, like destroy everything. Don't and I think ban's a little different than dedicated. So that's why
the right word. That's not what I'm getting from Strong.
Yeah, so either they're mistranslating it or something, because the ban is definitely different from dedicated. Just as far as context wise goes, it might not be a different word, but context wise, I know in scripture there's certain instances where it's different, where there if something's dedicated, Yahuwah will actually have them save it and give it to him as, like you said, a first fruits type of offering, versus ban means you don't take anything. It's you destroy everything. Like you'll see that in a lot of the chapters where it talks about the trees and stuff, and what trees to destroy, what trees to save. It talks about, with the giant tribes, they couldn't even save the cattle. They're like, you gotta destroy all their beasts of burden and everything. So yeah, I guess it depends on the context. It depends on what's going on.
The context is definitely that they were. It was dedicated to Yahuwah. 6 verse 24. The city was burned with fire, with all the things that were in it. Only of the silver, gold, brass, and iron they gave to be brought into the treasury of Yahuwah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so that's probably why Yahuwah was so strict on this guy. This was a first fruits offering he didn't give. Yeah, that could make sense why he was so strict on him, why there was no mercy shown. Oof.
Yeah, he stole from Yahuwah, man.
Oh, that's almost as bad as the Sephara and the other guy, where they lied to the Ruach and said, "Oh, we're gonna give you this. We're gonna give you this as like a free will type of offering of the sale of our house and all that," and then they go and hide the money. Wow, that's almost the same thing, except now you're lying on top of that. You're like, oh no, Chafa goes to them. He's like, you didn't lie to me. You lied to the Ruach. So, I could see a parallel between those two stories. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a bad thing. I could see why now he gave Saul mercy, because it was at least a little bit less of a sin. Because now with Saul, that's the perfect example of the other side of it, with putting stuff under the ban. Saul was supposed to, right, Mom, with the First Samuel book, Saul was supposed to put all that stuff he retrieved. He wasn't supposed to take it. He was supposed to destroy it, and he didn't destroy it. He took the cattle and everything, trying to give it as an offering. Yahuwah was like, and then I think it's Samuel. Yahuwah sends Samuel to him. He's like, "What are you doing? Why are you disobeying Yahuwah? Yahuwah told you to get, to destroy that stuff. What are you doing?"
It seems with Saul, the difference that I see with Saul there is it seems that I think what he said, that he feared the people, and so he listened to the people. And then when you have Samuel come in, you have Saul actually believing that he obeyed. So you have him like given into such a debased mind that he doesn't even realize that he transgressed. So it's
Yep. Yeah, kind of like similar to the golden calf incident in a weird way. He kind of messed up, kind of how Aaron messed up. That's kind of what Saul did. So listening to the people. Yeah. Yeah. So let's see here. I think that's pretty much what we got from chapter 7, though, is obviously the stoning of this guy, Akar. Let's see here.
I wonder if that was his actual name or if that was the name that they gave him, because his name means troubler.
Probably. That's probably a derogatory name they gave him. Let's see here. Huh. Okay. Yeah. So we, I think we're in the last chapter here. We're at chapter 8. Just see here. See here. Okay.
Thing. I never noticed before, and I was always like, why is because you have Yahusha or you have Yahuwah saying, why have you fallen upon your face? Like, get up. And that never me like, you have Yahusha crying out. Why is Yahuwah saying like, why have you fallen? Like, get up. Like, but if you pay attention to the way that Yahusha is speaking, it's almost like he's lost faith and now he's putting it on Yahuwah. Like, you brought your people in and now, now we're going to be an enemy, when just literally the chapter before he said, don't let this happen, and I will be with you. If you do let it happen, then, so you have, rather than Yahusha coming and saying, like, Abba, what did we do wrong? He's not even thinking about that. He's saying like, why are you allowing this to happen? Like, how are you going to fix this? So it's like he's blaming Yahuwah, at least from what I'm seeing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't see what was going on fully with the Israelites. He didn't see it.
He was definitely mad at Akar, man. He was definitely angry at him. So yeah. So let's see here. Let's get a new reader here. Let's see. Sister Milka, if you're able to, you think you could read chapter 8 for us? Or
Sure.
maybe. Oh, okay, cool. All right, let's see here. Put it on the share screen again.
Mhm.
Okay.
Let me know when you're ready.
Yep.
Okay. And Yahuwah said unto Yahusha, Fear not, neither be dismayed. Take all the people of war with you, and arise. Go up to Ai. See, I have given into your hand the king of Ai, and his people, and his city, and his land. And you shall do to Ai and her king as you did unto Jericho and her king. Only the spoil thereof and the cattle thereof shall ye take for a prey unto yourselves. Lay you in ambush for the city behind it. So Yahusha arose and all the people of war to go up against Ai, and Yahusha chose out 30,000 mighty men of valor and sent them away by night. And he commanded them, saying, Behold, ye shall lie in wait against the city, even behind the city. Go not very far from the city, but be ye all ready. And I and all the people that are with me will approach unto the city, and it shall come to pass, when they come out against us, as at the first, that we will flee before them. for they will come out after us, till we have drawn them from the city. For they will say, they flee before us, as at the first. Therefore we will flee before them. Then ye shall rise up from the ambush and seize upon the city, for Yahuwah will deliver it into your hand. And it shall be, when you have taken the city, that ye shall set the city on fire, according to the commandment of Yahuwah, shall ye do. See, I have commanded you. Yahusha therefore sent them forth, and they went to lie in ambush and abode between Beel and Ai, on the west side of Ai. But Yahusha lodged that night among the people. And Yahusha rose up early in the morning and numbered the people, and went up, he and the elders of Yasharel, before the people of Ai. And all the people, even the people of war that were with him, went up and drew nigh, and came before the city, and pitched on the north side of Ai. Now there was a valley between them and Ai, and he took about 5,000 men, set them to lie in ambush between Bet and Ai, on the west side of the city. And when, sorry, did I say? Okay. And when they had set the people, even all the host that was on the north of the city, and their liers in wait on the west of the city, Yahusha went that night into the midst of the valley. And it came to pass, when the king of Ai saw it, and they hasted and rose up early, and the men of the city went out against Yasharel to battle, he and all his people at a time appointed before the plain. But he knew not that there were liers in ambush against him behind the city. And Yahusha and all Yasharel made as if they were beaten before them, and fled by the way of the wilderness. And all the people that were in Ai were called together to pursue after them, and they pursued after Yahusha, and were drawn away from the city. And there was not a man left in Ai or Beel that went not out after Yasharel. And they left the city open and pursued after Yasharel. And Yahuwah said unto Yahusha, stretch out the spear that is in your hand toward Ai, for I will give it into your hand. And Yahusha stretched out the spear that he had in his hand toward the city. And the ambush arose quickly out of their place. And they ran as soon as he had stretched out his hand. And they entered into the city and took it, and hasted and set the city on fire. And when the men of Ai looked behind them, they saw, and behold, the smoke of the city ascended up to heaven. And they had no power to flee this way or that way. And the people that fled to the wilderness turned back upon the pursuers. And when Yahusha and all Yasharel saw that the ambush had taken the city, and that the smoke of the city ascended, then they turned again and slew the men of Ai. And the other issued out of the city against them. So they were in the midst of Yasharel, some on this side and some on that side. And they smote them, so that they let none of them remain or escape. And the king of Ai they took alive and brought him to Yahusha. And it came to pass, when Yasharel had made an end of slaying all the inhabitants of Ai in the field, in the wilderness, wherein they chased them, and when they were all fallen on the edge of the sword, until they were consumed, that all Yasharel returned unto Ai, and smote it with the edge of the sword. And so it was, that all that fell that day, both men and women, were 12,000, even all the men of Ai. For Yahusha drew not his hand back, wherewith he stretched out the spear, until he had utterly destroyed all the inhabitants of Ai. Only the cattle and the spoil of that city Yasharel took for a prey unto themselves, according unto the word of Yahuwah, whom he commanded Yahusha. And Yahusha burnt Ai, and made it a heap forever, even a desolation unto this day. And the king of Ai he hanged on a tree until evening. And as soon as the sun was down, Yahusha commanded that they should take his carcass down from the tree, and cast it at the entering of the gate of the city, and raise thereon a great heap of stones that remains unto this day. Then Yahusha built an altar unto Yahuwah of Yasharel in Mount Eval, As Moshe, the servant of Yahuwah, commanded the children of Yasharel, as it is written in the Sefer of the Torah of Moshe, an altar of whole stones, over whom no man has lifted up any iron, and they offered thereon ascending smoke offerings unto Yahuwah, and sacrificed peace offerings. And he wrote there upon the stones a copy of the Torah of Moshe, whom he wrote in the presence of the children of Yasharel. And all Yasharel and their elders and officers and their judges stood on this side the ark, and on that side before the priest, the Leviim, whom bore the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah, as well the stranger, as he that was born among them, half of them over against Mount Gerizim, and half of them over against Mount Aval, as Moshe the servant of Yahuwah had commanded before, that they should Baruch the people of Yasharel. And afterward he read all the words of the Torah, the Baruchas and the cursings, according to all that is written in the Sefer of the Torah. There was not a word of all that Moshe commanded, whom Yahusha read, not before all the assembly of Yasharel, with the women and the little ones and the strangers that were conversant among them.
Verse 8 in the Masoretic seems to have more, go more in depth. The Septuagint is not have. The Masoretic reads that you shall set the city on fire according to the commandment of Yahuwah you shall do. See, I have commanded you, which is in the Septuagint.
Interesting. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. I also like verse 31 there. It goes references back to Exodus 20. As Moshe, the servant of Yahuwah, commanded the children of Yasharel, as it is written in the law of Moshe, an altar of unhewn stones on which iron had not been lifted up. He offered their whole burnt offerings to Yahuwah and a peace offering. Now, interestingly enough, here you see, like, it seems the Levitical priesthood is not like fully established here, because you have Yahusha offering a peace offering on the altar there. So I kind of wonder either that or they treated Yahusha as a king. Maybe Yahusha was kind of like a king.
Maybe brought the
That's
and the Levites were the ones who actually did it, and it's just not going into detail.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like he almost was like a surrogate king before they started having kings of Israel, or like, well, at this point, yeah, the book of Yahusha is right after Deuteronomy, right? So they're technically we haven't seen the first actual Israelite king yet. So he's almost acting as the office of king with this. We see later on Daud would do the same thing. He would offer the animal up on the altar, and the priest would actually do the sacrifice. So I kind of find that interesting. Could be a way to also foreshadow Yahusha, how Yahusha is our Canaan priest. Yeah, he's acting like a. Oh, go ahead.
I can see that. I think more in lines with what I was meaning was that, you know, we have each of us are supposed to bring our offering. Even within the feast days, we're to bring our offering, but it's not us that is actually offering it. We're just bringing our offerings, and the Luim are the ones that are offering them.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think verse 32 also shows that he was acting like in the office of a king. It says that he wrote upon the stones a copy of the law, even the law of Masha before the children of Yashrael. If you know anything about what the kings would have to do, they would have to write themselves a copy of the law. So I definitely see a lot of stuff pointing to that Yahusha, son of Nun, was like almost like a king. And I kind of wonder, because when do we actually get official kings for Israel, Mom? What is that, Judges or First Samuel?
Oh, no, it's First Samuel.
Yeah, so you don't have an official Israelite king until like First Samuel being recorded. Even though Yahuwah gave the commandment in Deuteronomy 17, we don't see that actually being what is the word I'm looking for? Actually being used until First Samuel and all that went. Because at this point, mind you, still Yahuwah is like still king over Israel. At this point, Yahuwah is their king. We don't see them rejecting Yahuwah's kingship until First Samuel. So it's almost like Yahusha, son of Nun, is like being the mediator and being the it's almost like he's in the place of Yahusha. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
So he's human representation of Yahuwah's authority. Is kind of what I see, because when I saw that in verse 32, it says that he was writing a copy of the law, and I was like thinking, yeah, that's something that the kings would be commanded to do.
Wait, it says, oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it says upon stones he wrote a copy of the law, even the law of Masha before the children of Yashrael. So he had some kingly duties here. It's kind of interesting. See here, their elders, their judges, scribes passed on one side, on the other before the ark. And then talks about how half of them went on Mount Gerizim, half of them went on Mount Ebal, as Masha, the servant of Yahuwah, commanded at first to Barak the people. And that's a whole nother topic, but I don't think originally he commanded them to Barak on Mount Ebal. I seriously doubt it. Or my bad, not to make an altar on Mount Ebal. I seriously doubt he commanded them to make an altar on Ebal originally. I think it was actually Gerizim. I would have to agree with the Samaritan Torah that Gerizim would have been when the place he commanded them to put an altar on, not Ebal. Ebal doesn't make sense to me. The same place you're cursing.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it doesn't make much sense. But so anyway, afterwards, Yahusha read according. So he also read the law before the people. Isn't that another thing the king's supposed to do? Read the law in the presence of the people?
So.
I think I would have to go back to Deuteronomy 10 or 17 where that is.
Yeah.
Afterwards, Yahusha read according all the words of this law, the barakas and the curses according to all the things written in the law of Masha. There was not a word of all that Masha charged Yahusha, which Yahusha read not in the ears of all the assembly of the children of Yashrael, the men and the women, the children and the strangers that joined themselves to Yashrael. I like how it says the strangers that joined themselves. So it's not a regular stranger. Yeah. Yeah, you could get it in the Masoretic too, but it's kind of generic. It says strangers that were conversant among them. I like how the Septuagint makes a distinction between regular strangers and strangers that are part of Israel. Yeah, so very interesting. But that's about it. So, what I also like too, it talked about that this king of Ai was hanged on a tree. And so that seems like that was also part of the Torah, is that whenever capital punishment, it was very common to impale someone on a tree for capital punishment.
Wasn't Saul hanging from a tree too?
Saul, no, he killed himself.
He killed himself.
Yeah, it was not on a tree, I don't think. I
Oh,
think
it was,
you're
David's
confused.
son.
You're confusing
It was
Absalom, and
that's
he was not hanging on a tree either. That was an accident. He basically, if I remember correctly, he was riding a horse and hit the tree.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
His hair got caught in the tree.
That's a spiritual allegory too. Usually hair means strength. So
Arizim
it's
really famous now because that's where Saul and Jonathan got killed too.
yeah.
I had a brother tell me one time that this is why we don't wear long hair, because the only person other than Samson that you see with long hair, which is not true, we see other people in scripture with long hair, but he said one of the few people that we see with long hair, like, got caught in a tree with hair. I think Absalom, I think it says he also, like, it described him as like really like well looking, and that he would pull his hair once a year. He would like shave it off and weigh it. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I could see his point. The only problem is that, like you said, there's multiple people in scripture. And I have a feeling that's a rabbinical tradition, because the whole idea you can't have long hair. I noticed that with the priests.
Sorry.
That you have, like, with the priests, the high priest, in the book of Ezekiel, the Masoretic changes the verse to say you need to well trim your hair. Says something like, don't let your hair grow too long. So it seems like that was a rabbinical tradition, to look at long hair as evil for men. That was a rabbinical tradition. Because the Septuagint will say for the high priest, they can't shave their hair at all. And if you look at the Ezekiel, I think it's 44 or something in the Masoretic, it says to keep their hair well trimmed. So I have a feeling that's a rabbinical thing. And whatever Paul's talking about has to be a different context. He has to be talking about, having your hair long, very femininely long. Like you see these supermodels, like these male supermodels that have literally hair like women, like very long, streaky, feminine looking type of hairstyles. Is probably what Paul was talking about. So, but anyway, yeah. So that's as far as scripture's concerned, it was definitely not a evil thing for men to have long hair. It depended on what type of long hair you were having, and stuff like that. So, mainly it was about like not looking like a woman. Yahuwah made us men to look like men, not for men to have effeminate features. In ancient times, men would have long hair that characterized a woman's long hair, that looks similar to how women wear long hair. and they would probably put makeup on, and they would probably make themselves look like a woman. And that's what Yahuwah is against. He's against trying to switch the gender roles. You know, that is against Yahuwah's will, to try to make a man look like a woman. Same thing with don't put women's garments, you know, on men and vice versa. But anyway. Trying to see if there was anything else in this chapter here.
I think it could possibly be too not doing it in the state of look at me, because I think in the same chapter with Shaul, it talks about women wearing braided hair, you know, and I don't think that there's I could be wrong. I just don't think that's necessarily, it was the braiding of the hair that he was talking about. I think it was more that they were doing that. I believe he was talking to the Ephesians at that point. I could be wrong. Or was it the Corinthians? Whoever he was talking to, they were probably doing it in the state of, because I think he also talks about doing things not to be seen by others. So whatever they were doing, the way that they were wearing their hair, the way that they were dressing, they were doing it in a state of what's the word? Vanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that the purpose of what he says there is really not about their hairstyles, really not about that jewelry's bad or anything. I think there's people that have misinterpreted that verse to make it look like that, and that's why you have certain women that don't wear any jewelry, which actually would make no sense, since the Torah actually has allowances for jewelry for certain purposes. So that would make no sense at all for Paul to be contending for Torah, but then saying, oh no, you know, you shouldn't be wearing jewelry, you shouldn't be wearing earrings or nose rings. Yet we see nose rings even in the Torah. So, you know, that to me would make no sense. That would be a huge contradiction in scripture to interpret it that way. So, yeah, I agree that it has to do with vanity. It has to be a context.
Because Peter talks about it too.
But anyway, so I don't think we can analyze this chapter more than we've had already. So, you know, yeah. So that's pretty much the end of our reading for today. That was Yahusha chapter 8. You know, a lot of important lessons that we've learned just in these 4 chapters here. I find it interesting. The last thing I wanted to just emphasize was verse 18 there. It seems like Yahuwah is doing with Yahusha what he did with Masha. He says, stretch forth your hand with the spear that is in your hand toward the city, for I have delivered it into your hands. Kind of similar to how he tells Masha to, with the rod, to stretch forth his hand with the rod. So we see that Yahuwah empowered Masha in a similar way that he empowered Yahusha, son of Nun there, how he gives the city into his hand. So, very interesting. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this study, and if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to our ministry here. To all of our brothers and sisters out there, I just wanted to say I hope you guys have a great rest of your Shabbat. I should say Yahuwah Shabbat. Please stay tuned. Yahuwah willing, will be on next Friday evening, next Sabbath evening, and next Shabbat, Yahuwah willing, and we'll be continuing our studies. So have a great rest of your Shabbat, everyone out there. Shabbat Shalom, and Yahuwah willing, see you next time.